Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you very much, Martin. That was a very good, helpful introduction. My name is Jonathan Reeves, as Martin says, and I'm the director of a small architectural practice, but we also focus on Vectorworks professional CAD and BIM training and sales and also visualization services for other architects. So over the course of my career, I've been really fortunate in getting involved in a wide variety of projects with lots of really amazing architects. So about a year ago, something I've always been thinking about was the idea of writing a book. Innovative Vectorworks BIM is the result of a sort of pretty much a year's work off and on. And I'm really, really proud to share the stage with a couple of really good colleagues, friends and fine architects, Dan and Luke, who will be presenting after me. So I mustn't run on for too long. But what I would like to do is, if I may, just share with you a couple of projects, one small one and one very large one. If I have time, I may even show a medium one, but I suspect we'll run short of time. So the title of my initial talk this morning is Design-Led BIM. I've always really come at using Vectorworks and 3D and building information modelling, I suppose from a design point of view, as opposed to often what the industry talks about, the sort of far-end collaborative side of things. The exciting thing is, though, as a place to get started, if you use Vectorworks BIM as a design tool, you can begin to understand and feel very confident about how the collaborative side works and is developing quite rapidly. So as time's gone on, and I'll show you the last example, the collaborative side of BIM is really starting to pick up now and starting to work extremely well. So I'm very excited really to show you a couple of projects. I'll just do a very brief introduction. So for me, I've always wanted a piece of software that I felt could support my architectural creativity. So for me, it's really important that that software is very strong on conception, construction, and also communication. So I'm not going to kind of just read exactly what's on screen. You can certainly read that, but it really is important, as well as 2D graphical capabilities. And I think many of you who use Vectorworks will agree it kind of is the best out there in terms of 2D graphics in the CAD world. For me, it's also been really important right from the beginning to have a really good, strong 3D modeling side. And as time's gone on, I would say the 3D has evolved much more into building information modeling, using not just extrusions and solids and additions, but also parametric modeling tools like walls, windows, doors, roofs, that sort of thing. So there's been a real kind of development over the time, and it's really important as well to have a very high-end rendering software built in, which we definitely now have in the shape of RenderWorks. It's no good being able to conceive the design and sketch up very quickly models and ideas if you then can't take it forward and you've got to dump that to go and do another model or another set of drawings. Some other software allows you to conceive things very quickly, but then it has a bit of a limit. For me, I want to do the construction side of the documentation in the same software that I develop my sketch designs in. I think it's obvious that there's a workflow benefit if you can stay within one piece of software. So, I've loved Vectorworks for this. I've always found it really capable in terms of hybrid working methods, i.e. 2D plans, but also producing a three-dimensional model. You'll see this very much is how I work. Hands up who is using Vectorworks in a sort of 3D form today in some way or another. Very good. Hands up those of you who haven't yet sort of really started much on 3D with Vectorworks and maybe using other stuff. So yeah, there's still quite a few of you. I really hope that by the end of today, you will be utterly convinced how fantastic Vectorworks is for 2D, but also very much for 3D and BIM. And I really, really encourage you to start to develop some skills on 3D Vectorworks. So finally, it's all very well being able to conceive and construct ideas. I also find the presentation side is a key requirement of the profession these days. Whether it's just doing a presentation for a competition, which we will talk about in a minute, that I worked with Martin on, or whether it's about producing brochures for planning or nice documents for planning applications, Personally, I find if you put much more time into producing a really beautiful planning application, you get very good results back often, because the planners are, it's refreshing for them to see a very clearly communicated idea and design. So it's very important that we can work with a wide range of other software by importing and exporting from a wide range of softwares like IFC files for collaboration, DWG, obviously working with other software vendors, certainly PDFs, SketchUp files, all these kind of things. For me, Vectorworks is a bridge application like no other in that it can import a huge range of file types and also go the other way. I think in my whole time of using it, over 20 years, I don't think I've really ever found a file type, apart from maybe a Revit file, that I couldn't directly import. There's reasons why we can't, but there's always a way to get the information in or out of the software. Okay, so I'm going to start off by talking about a small project that I did, a relatively small project for a new house down in Devon. I've recently moved from Devon up to the Midlands. And basically, it was a nice little project, and I was very proud that won runner-up for BIM Project of the Year last year for this project. So that was a nice little bonus, really. So before I kind of skip on to my next slide, if you excuse me, I will just pop out of the PowerPoint, or Keynote, as it were, and I'm just going to jump straight into Vectorworks. So I quite like to present to my clients when they come into the office, as well as printing off the odd sheet of paper. I really like presenting on screen and talking about the design, because I find that I can get them a lot more involved. So basically, if I may, just give me a few minutes and I'll try and describe this project to you. If I just gave you some sheets of paper, you'd take a lot longer to absorb and understand the project. But by showing you on screen, I hope that I can engage you a little bit more. So basically, what I've got here at the top of the screen is all my drawings that I've created on this one project. I've gone a little bit over the top, to be fair. I've produced all of my planning drawings, all of my building regs drawings, and all of my construction drawings in one document. Now, you might perhaps find that a little bit scary. I personally don't. For small to medium-sized projects, it works very well. Of course, on much bigger projects, yes, split it up more, get involved in team working, referencing, and now project sharing. But it actually works extremely well. And for the majority of small to medium-sized architects, this can be a real time saver. So if I may, I'm just going to flick through some of the drawings. You can see I've got a little front cover, so I use Vectorworks a bit like InDesign. I rarely use other software now, apart from using InDesign for the book. I wouldn't use it for design presentations at all. So if we kind of navigate into the plans, you can see they're quite detailed. I've got, obviously, walls, windows, doors. I'm using very intelligent objects, things like the General Notes tool. So if I double-click on that, you can see that I have all my building regulations notes set up within the notes database. And this is a fantastic feature of Architect. If you've never explored, it's definitely one I would encourage you to have a look at quite easily. Using the callout tool or the notes database, you can essentially build a practice set of building regs or planning notes for a project. And it makes it very easy just to simply click, add a set of notes across. If you want to edit them on this side, you can. And then you can see down here, we've now added that particular note to the project. And it makes sense. As architects, we're always doing quite repetitive things on most projects. Why not get all those notes and everything together in one place? Okay, I won't go too much into the detail on this, but another really nice little set tool that I find very useful is this tool, the setting out tool, I call it, or the stake object. And essentially what you can do with this is basically plug in different coordinate points. So you can see that by essentially clicking, I can generate different coordinate values within my design. I think I've done those in the annotation space. So this is very helpful when you give the contractor information and they can actually set the building out. Everything is automatic. I don't have to manually sort of work out coordinate values or anything like that. Okay, so we'll scroll through a few more of the plans. Now, the exciting thing is all of these drawings are generated from the model. So when you get to the elevations, these aren't really drawings at all. These are 100% generated from my Vectorworks model. I'm using RenderWorks and a fairly basic rendering. But I think you'll agree, I hope you agree, for planning, they're more than adequate, really. And the benefit there is that I can then annotate these viewports with a bit of additional information. So if I double-click, you'll see I can go into my annotations mode. And within here, not only can I sort of annotate some ground lines, put trees, people and cars, that sort of thing on, I can also add more detailed information like construction information. Now this is really important because what it means is, as a method of working in a BIM workflow, the beauty with Vectorworks I've always found is you can kind of jump into BIM from wherever you are. You know, you might have just sketched out some lines or some shapes. You can then turn those shapes into walls or slabs or roofs. But you can also jump off the BIM wagon whenever you want as well. When you get the model to a certain point, you might not want to model the detail. You might just want to draw that in. So by using the annotations layer, it's kind of get yourself out of trouble place where you can easily just add additional information. So for me, that's one of the beauties of the application. It's not prescriptive in terms of modelling. You don't have to model every single element of the building. Model a little bit, add a bit more in annotations, model a bit more, add less in annotations. So there's lots and lots of ways of working. And the beauty with that is it allows you to ramp your skills up to a point where you can model more and draw less, or you can model a little bit, draw a bit more, you can choose. I really personally like construction drawings like this. They're fun. Even the building inspector complimented these, and you know, you rarely get a compliment from the building inspector. It's about the first time ever. But it does explain the construction of the drawing and the building quite clearly. So you can see the ability to present the model in lots of different ways is one of the real key advantages of a BIM workflow, as well as the 2D plans, the sections and the elevations. The ability to explode and show different types of internal, external space. I love that. And then drawings like this. So I'll just show you this one briefly. This was done quite a few years ago now. If I double click into the annotations, you know, look, I've actually added quite a bit of stuff there, which I couldn't be bothered to model at the time, you know, all the roof rafters and stuff like that. Subsequently, on other projects, I've taken the model a lot further and drawn a lot less, as I was saying. But at this particular time, the roof tool perhaps didn't have the components, which you'll see later it now does. Thank you, Nemetschek, for introducing that. Oh, sorry, Vectorworks. Very pleased you've introduced that feature. So it really is a very effective way. I'm just going to quickly scroll through. You can see right down to the details of producing a coordinated set of information. Now, the real beauty is, if you come to then change the design, all the drawings are updated, the sections, the plans, the elevations. So one little change that my client requested many times, can we do this, can we do that? Even though we're on site, I'm still able to update the drawings, resubmit them for planning to get a minor amendment in lightning time. Whereas, you know, with traditional workflow, you might be a little bit reluctant to make those changes. So I think it's a good way to keep your clients happy and keep up with the pace of change. Okay, I'm just going to really talk very briefly about this. So of course, one of the key elements of BIM is the ability to schedule lots of information as well. So on this particular project, I generated all the door and window schedules, and it was just really nice and straightforward, and it, you know, it's as it should be. So let's move on to my next project, if I may. I think time is short, and we'll run through this very quickly, I know. So I'll go back into here just for a second. So now I'm going to go to the opposite end of the scale. And most recently, was it 2 weeks ago, Martin? We worked on a collaborative project called Build Earth Live New York. Fantastic competition to be involved with. It was a 48-hour competition. So we've got the brief at 5 o'clock on a Monday, submission by 5 o'clock on the Wednesday. 48 hours with a global team of about 22 people from 4 or 5 different time regions in the world. And the idea was not only to develop a design from start to finish and see how far you could get in that time. The idea was to collaborate and to use lots of different softwares together to see how the collaboration worked. It was a fantastic experience. I mean, we didn't get much sleep, Martin, did we? I think it was hard work, but it was very, very fun. Really pleased to say that the BIM Unlimited team that we were part of won the prize for best use of BIM and sustainability for constructability. So we were really, really pleased to be awarded with this prize. So if I may, I'm just going to run through complete opposite end of the scale from my normal kind of work. So essentially, we were provided an IFC, Industry Foundation Classes file of the site. And that's pretty much what we got, that and a brief, not much else. So the first step was to import the IFC file into Vectorworks and obviously have a site model that the team could work with. So I think I probably established the coordinates for then the architects who were based in the Dominican Republic. Luckily, they had a different time zone, so when we went to bed, got a few hours sleep, they carried on. So here you can see the actual building, the slightly more detailed building down at the front. So really, this is what we produced from zero, from nothing, to final result within 48 hours. So it was quite an interesting building. It was basically a residential tower building, 60-story high, and a leisure stadium as well. Down at the bottom here, you can see in a bit more detail. Definitely would encourage you, if you haven't got time for ultra polished, ultra photorealistic, go the other way. You know, make things look quite sketchy. And there's some nice little bits of software that we can do that with now, including Renderworks actually has a wide range of built-in rendering for sketch rendering capability. So here's a slightly more realistic one. Personally, I quite like the sketchy one, but you know, everybody has their own favourite type of presentation. So as part of the team, it was really important that we did some energy analysis and some shadow study analysis as well. This is 100% Vectorworks using Renderworks to create a solar study using the Heliodon tool. How many of you have ever used the Heliodon tool to do sun shadow studies of your designs? Yeah, so quite a few of you. It's a fantastic tool, and it's remarkably efficient and quick and easy to produce solar studies. For me, it's probably something that I do on nearly every project these days. And they're really nice and fun. And very quick to do. That probably only took 2 minutes to render. So super, super fast and very convincing. Oops, I knew that would happen. So while that's starting back up, that's not Vectorworks, that's Keynote. Let's click back into Vectorworks. I'll maybe come back and finish off that. Okay, so here we are in Vectorworks. Here is my little presentation of this project here. So if I drop down, I've got some saved views this time, as well as sheet layers, which are the drawings you create to print. Saved views are very handy as a way of preparing a little presentation to your client, which is you today, my audience. So essentially, I'm going to start off with my first slide. You can see here is the IFC model that was imported. So we really didn't have a huge amount to go on. It was pretty basic, and that was the context for the project. So let's scroll down to the next one. So here, slide 2, or save view 2, is the building. So this building is referenced from the architects. So essentially, we used a collaborative site called SamePage. I was able to download their model. And you can see here, using my referencing, I was referenced their model in. So I really didn't need to touch their model at all. So anytime they updated their model, which happened quite a few times, I could simply update my reference file, and their latest design would appear into the design. So you can see, even though it's an absolutely huge model, Vectorworks now, thanks to last year's 64-bit rewriting that the guys worked so hard on, is super fast and super quick, even on massive projects. And I think, you know, hopefully you'll agree, they don't come much bigger than this, probably, for most UK architects. So let's scroll on to the next slide. So here we can see the building in full context. And even then, with everything turned on, with all the shadows on, it's pretty nimble and it's easy to work with. And that is the beauty. You know, when I first started 3D Vectorworks on a Mac with about, you know, half a megabyte of RAM or something ridiculous, you know, even then it was fun, but it was slow. These days, with a decent little bit of hardware and fantastic software like we have, the only limit is your creativity and your skills. So for me, that's the key thing to invest in now, not the price of the computer or the software, is your actual skills as an architect or designer. And the ability to work rapidly just means that you get into a flow state. It means that you're not held back by waiting for things to regenerate. And it was a dream on this project. Really, really fun to do. So I'm just going to go through a few of the views. So you can see even on these views, if I was presenting live to the client, it would be really nice. Yeah, you kind of get them in to the office on the big screen and sort of walk them through. There's some really nice kind of walk-through tools that Vectorworks have given us now. Can you see these buttons up here? So if I hit, nice little shortcut tip for you today, jot this one down. If you hit the U key on the keyboard, we can cycle through these live. So I can kind of cycle through the U key, and it's quite fun. I can sort of go up and down and walk through and so on. Okay, let's have a look. I've also got the Heliodon active. Let's just see if this works. So you should be able to kind of scroll through essentially in real time, and the shadows will update very dynamically, even on a very large model like this. So that's really handy. Now, I know I'm running short of time, so I must whiz on to my last slides. One of the really nice aspects of the latest Vectorworks, I love this, is the clip cube. And this is something that we've started to use a lot on each project. And essentially, it's a very powerful tool. And as soon as you see the clip cube in action, it makes sense. I mean, it's all about sectioning, creating sections of your model. And essentially, if I right-click, create a section viewport, that's it. And I can generate a section of my project. And as we know, traditionally, sections take a long time to draw. And the beauty is, we can now section in not just one direction, but all directions. And I love this new feature. I'm really pleased they've introduced this. The ability to sort of section through any layer of the plan. Essentially, whoops. Here we go. Yeah, let's go down to there. And then right-click, create a section viewport from the top, from the side, wherever you want. Another really nice aspect of the clip cube, and I encourage you to use this, is the B key gives me X-ray fill, which means I can see into my model. So if I go quite deep into this model, it's a bit cluttered, there's still quite a lot going on there. If I kind of select, actually that's not going to work because it's the whole thing's one big element. But essentially what it means is, I'll show you later on, I can really clip into the model to allow myself to not be distracted by all the other objects that are kind of getting in the way normally for 3D. So as well as being an amazing presentation tool, it's also a fantastic modeling tool itself. So there's a couple of tips for you. Clip cube, have a go with that one. Have a go with the U key. And I've got lots of other hints and tips later when I reach my sort of final presentation. So I'd really like to just finish off these last couple of slides. I think we got to this one. So you can see here, as part of the project, collaboration with other consultants at that time was very, very important. So we kind of looked at the wind analysis. We used Solibri Model Viewer, or Checker, to schedule off all the quantities of the slabs and the beams and the columns, and that was remarkably easy from the model, and also the areas as well. So you can just about read the areas and the usage here, and we can also generate a nice little sort of coloured diagram of that project. So the final slide, I'll just let this run for a few seconds, was what they call 4D animation. And this involves using time to show phasing of the project, and potentially very useful for the contractor. On a huge project like this, the contractor will want to think about health and safety, think about how they're going to construct this building. To be able to use our Vectorworks model, export it as an IFC file, and simply load it into, I think, Synchro, this was done in, and show the phasing of the project. It's an obvious way to create a building, as opposed to just using 2D bits of paper and maybe cardboard models. So I really encourage you to start to have a look at the 3D side of Vectorworks and using the BIM tools. And I hope you'll join me later for 7 steps to BIM. We'll talk about that later on at 4 o'clock, if any of you would like to join us. Okay, well, I know time is short. I'm going to hand over now to Luke and then to Dan. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.